I too am guilty of focusing on Palestinian children. The reality is this is a genocide of children and their mothers. On the other hand, we should not allow our efforts to highlight that very dark reality, to highlight the violence being carried out against our men. Our men, like Reem's grandfather, who was recorded saying goodbye to her, holding her, hugging her, calling her the soul of his soul, he was then killed in an airstrike by Israel. We have many lessons that we can learn from Palestinians as a whole about humanity and about perseverance and resilience and resistance. But many of those lessons are actually taught to us by Palestinian men. Our men who are brave and courageous and loving and caring, and the heads of our household and our fathers and our brothers and our uncles and our heroes. Families being pulled from the rubble, the people pulling them out of the rubble are our men who are digging up our families with their bare hands, our men who are going through deep trauma in this moment as their families are being killed and they're unable to protect them, they're unable to provide for them. I can't imagine what it must be like for a Palestinian father to watch his kids starve and to know that there's nothing that he can do to provide for them. Our men get up every day, they stand in those lines, and they do what they can to try to provide in any way possible for their families in this moment. But we know that our men have been demonized. We know that our men have been perceived as criminals. We know that they are not afforded the presumption of innocence or humanity at all by commentators, whether they be from the corporate media or the US government. We know that they're systematically ignored in any recollections of those who are killed and injured because the summaries focus on the women and children. We know all of this. I wonder if the world knows that one of the last things that Muntasir al-Sawwaf, one of the Palestinian journalists who was killed by Israel, did before he was killed was feed all of the starving cats in his neighborhood. The last videos he had posted were of him walking around his neighborhood in northern Gaza, which had been completely turned to dust, taking care of all the cats, providing for all of them just a little bit of food. He had managed to source cat food, and so he was walking around, and every cat that he saw, he would put down a little bit of kibble for and feed. It's a shame to think that somebody like Muntasir al-Sawwaf, who spent this genocide in Gaza outrunning Israeli bombs, who was actually hit in a prior airstrike that had killed multiple members of his family. It's a shame to think that when he was then killed weeks later by another airstrike, that he would just be remembered as a number, as just one of the Palestinian journalists killed by Israel, and that people would not realize what his daily life was like in those weeks leading up to his killing. He, like all Palestinian men, thought about who he could take care of before he could take care of himself. It's important for us to resist and reject these attempts to demonize our men, because our men are noble, they're dignified. People like my grandfather, I mean, when I think of my grandfather, my Sida was the most gentle man I have ever met. He would bring my grandmother every week a crate of oranges because that was her favorite fruit. And he did that when they were in Gaza, and he did that every year of his life after they were prevented from returning to Gaza. The oranges were important because Palestine was known for its oranges, and that reminded my grandmother of their land. And so he continued that tradition of bringing her oranges every week until he died when he was 87 years old. Whenever I went to go visit him, he would always make sure to buy all the snacks that I loved and to have a selection of every juice possible for me in case I wanted pineapple juice or orange juice or cranberry juice or guava juice. He had everything ready. That's a Palestinian man, always thinking about his family before himself. And when he passed away, everybody said the same thing. Your grandfather never thought about himself. He always thought about his family first. He never asked for anything for himself. He always thought about his family first. He never asked to have anything new. He always wanted to provide new things for his family. That's very much my grandfather, but it's also very much every Palestinian man. People need to know that and understand that about our men.
لو حدا بسمعك اي حد شو الكلمه اللي بقلبك بدك تطلعها؟
حدا بسمعني في العالم بحكي له يا ريت توقفوا الحرب من اجل الاطفال، من اجل الزهرات، من اجل هذول الناس الرائعين.
لو هي قدامك اليوم شو بتحكي لها؟
أقول لها أنت روح الروح.
It's so essential in this moment to center Palestinian voices. We are credible narrators of our own lived experience, and unfortunately the corporate media does not allow us to present our lived experiences to the world and to contextualize our realities. That's why it's so important to support alternative media that does give Palestinians a platform, amplifies their voice, and allows them to tell their stories. Join the future of journalism. Join Double Down News on Patreon.